3 Chinese players have withdrawn from the sport's world rankings and international competitions.
This all comes after a row over fines for missing tournaments. Our correspondent Siobhan McCall has been following the story.
Yes, Fan Zhendong, Ma Long and Chen Meng are 3 of China's most iconic sports stars, and they all won gold at the Paris Olympics last summer. Fan says the Olympics took a lot out of him psychologically. In the rest of his message on Weibo, he added that World Table Tennis had recently introduced fines for not playing in their competitions, and players can't afford this, so he'll be withdrawing. He does say he won't be retiring, though. Well, Chen Meng, the women's singles champion, then put up a similar post. She again referred to the intensity of the Olympics and how she needed time to adjust her physical condition. Well, Ma Long is China's most successful ever Olympian. He hasn't commented on withdrawing, but his name is also no longer on the rankings, and he was ranked 8th in November. So it could be that he's retired, but he only recently said he had no plans to do so. So what about World Table Tennis? Well, it said in a statement that it deeply respects the contributions of Fan and Chen, but the rules are not new, and they came in 4 years ago. It added that they are intended to preserve the integrity of the sport. Well, Fan hit back and said he only received official confirmation last week and that the rules would be enforced from 2025 and not 2024. Well, the row adds to growing calls from elite-level athletes that they are facing too heavy schedules. In football, the Players' Union is suing world governing body FIFA over neglect of player welfare because of the number of games they have to play. One of tennis's top players, Carlos Alcaraz, also recently said that the tight schedule increases the risk of injury and makes it difficult for players to stay motivated. And as Fan and Chen reference, it's not just physical strain, but mental too. The gymnast that many consider to be the greatest of all time, Simone Biles, sparked a global discussion about mental health when she withdrew from the Tokyo 2020 Games, saying she had to focus on her mental well-being.
Well, Rob Koehler is Director General of Global Athlete, a movement for athletes, by athletes, for athletes. Rob, great to have you on the show. So, because of job, I believe that you are aware of the biggest physical, mental and emotional pressures that athletes face today. So, how do you think governing bodies can better support them?
Yeah, I mean, I think sport needs a complete overhaul. You hear it just earlier in tennis, in football, in badminton, where athletes are treated as commodities. So they're told exactly what they have to do, when they do it, and there's no equal partnership. Athletes are alone. Most of them live below poverty level, and international federations really don't care when you look at the treating athletes, their well-being, their status in terms of their mental health. And that's why we've been calling for change for the past 5 years to demand that the international sport embrace and accept something called collective bargaining, where you negotiate whether it's tournament schedules, whether it's income revenues. There needs to be a level playing field and an equal playing field, and currently that doesn't exist. Sport brings all the money in, but they give very little to the athletes. And not only money, but they treat them, as I said, as commodities that are here today and will leave tomorrow. They'll just replace them with someone else. Sport needs to change immediately. And, you know, to use the saying of the IOC president, Thomas Bach, either change or be changed through force change. And I think that's what we're going to see in 2025, is athletes coming up and standing up and forming independent athlete groups to push the sports to adapt to a new world. And that has to happen.
And Rob, it's interesting you mentioned collective bargaining, and we know that many of the world-famous athletes, they have really large followings, and still, so there needs to be some changes to give athletes a stronger voice in decision-making.
There does, because the current method, when you look at, let's take international federations or the International Olympic Committee, they set up these quasi-athlete groups or athlete committees that say they represent athletes of the world, which is just nothing further from the truth. These athletes go into these committees, they sign agreements where they must support the International Olympic Committee or the federation's decisions. So there's really no independent or athlete group that's pushing for change. And that's where, you know, if you look at collective bargaining in all professional sport, and let's not be fooled, when you look at badminton, football, tennis, it's professional sport. These people are dedicating full time of their day and their weeks and years to compete and to bring in revenues from the sport, but they're not. And collective bargaining, in every sense, has yielded benefits in terms of player safety, better scheduling, and more compensation, both for athletes and the sport federations. And I think that's where, the IOC and the international sport is 30 years behind and need to move into this century and start treating athletes as humans and protecting them, supporting them, and compensating them. What other career goal would you go into to say, you're not going to get paid. If you win, you may get paid. For the next 15 years, that's going to be your life. I wouldn't take that job. So I think we need to start seeing things change and athletes treated better.
Yeah, right. There is still a lot to do. Thank you very much for your insight. That is Rob Koehler, Director General of Global Athlete.